Well, thank you so much, Vicky, for joining us today for our podcast. Really appreciate it. So I'll stop talking and kind of let you introduce yourself and the work that you do at the university.
Yeah, so I'm Victor and I work for the Careers and Employability Service at the University of Nottingham. So my job isn't specifically working with students as such, but I work with businesses. So I work with them to try and get them to recruit students into internships, placements, or graduate roles. So a lot of what I do is business development work. So speaking to companies, seeing what their needs are, seeing how we can support them. I also am the team that organise careers fairs. We run our jobs portal, and I also work quite locally with lots of local companies on initiatives to try and keep students and graduates within the Nottinghamshire area. So that's a project under the Universities for Nottingham umbrella.
Yeah, so you work with Trent as well, so both of you working together.
More so now than we ever have.
Yeah.
It's very much a collaborative approach with Nottingham Trent. So years ago, maybe not, but now very much so.
Yeah, which is great news to kind of share resources and stuff. I'll bring it up later in the podcast, but there's obviously a couple of events that I've gone to that both of you have hosted together, which are really insightful and useful. So a great partnership there, and for the local companies in Nottinghamshire area. But kind of the first question that I wanted to tackle, and which I guess is kind of this idea that people have, that Gen Z and Gen Alpha, that they're quite lazy and they don't want to come into work and they're not good in the workforce. It goes on and on and on. Just wanting to know, as someone that kind of has day-to-day contact with universities and helps employers hire your students, what do you have to say about that stereotype?
I definitely think it's a myth. I think if that is what people are judging at, then it's a very, very small minority of students, and it's not a trend that we see at all at the university. Particularly since COVID, actually, students we found now are more engaged than they ever have been. I've been working at the university for 14 years, and this is definitely the more students I've ever seen, the more they're very philanthropic. They do lots of extra activity and they're more engaged than they ever have been, specifically with the careers service. So it is really, really good to see.
And I would definitely say that as someone, I get your newsletters and things that you send out. There's a lot of student-led things, like the Send Careers Fairs that we've been talking about, and kind of also the event that you did, kind of seeing the students there. I know you got a couple of students to kind of speak from both universities. Their insight and drive was remarkable, really, and the things that they'd achieved, and they were so proactive to go out and get those placements and internships and whatnot. And especially from us, we have our grads and apprentices that we have kind of to recruit that early workforce. Big shout out to Jude behind the camera. But they are really kind of impressive and they bring a lot of value. We don't just hire them to say that we've hired apprentices and grads, but also the value that they bring into the business is massive.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting that you said about COVID as well after the pandemic. I think a lot of people say that the pandemic has caused kind of this Gen Alpha and Gen Z to have these attributes, which we both agree aren't there. But interested for your kind of take on why you think this stigmatism has built kind of with the younger generation.
I think because of COVID, obviously it did not quite few people's self-esteem and confidence. People now who are studying at university could have done their A-levels online or their GCSEs online. And I think there was a bit of a culture that if you are doing something online all the time, then bad habits might form. So we did a lot of work recently with companies because of students or graduates going into the workplace might not necessarily be work ready because they don't understand the main principles, because they've either not had the opportunity to do it or they just don't know. They don't know how to create a signature on Outlook, or they don't actually know what office etiquette is, or they don't know things like when you're on a Teams call, you shouldn't vape.
Yes,
That type
we were
of thing.
talking about that before, yeah.
But that's purely because they don't know any different. So when you're on a lecture, you don't have to turn your camera on. You don't have to say anything if it's online. So you can quite easily sit there with a vape and smoke and nobody knows any different. So it's just, I think, re-educating them a little bit more. But having said that, then I think the students that are coming out now, because more of them are doing the work experience and more of them, they do have part-time works, there is that little bit of knowledge behind them. So we're hopefully going to see a shift in change in that again.
And obviously you do amazing work at the university to kind of help educate your students on like the soft skills of coming into the business.
Yeah.
But do you also, on a side note, think that there's a responsibility for the employer as well? And kind of, is that the work that you do with the employers in Nottingham to kind of also get them to educate their young workforce?
Absolutely. It's the same thing, sort of teaching them. I think as long as you don't have high expectations, especially if they're a first job, and sort of sitting with them and explaining what an office environment is. So I've come in here today and you're quite casual in the way that you are, where it's completely different in my office. You know, we're smart casual. Yes, we can wear trainers, but we're not allowed to wear jeans to work. So as long as they start learning the principles like that and learning about a company and helping them as well before they come into that job, to saying to them, you know, we are a smart casual, feel free to wear jeans, that type of thing, and helping them to become sort of like mold them to how you want them to be, to fit into them. But you will know from an interview process whether that person's going to fit into the role or not, because that's what your interview process is there for. And my theory is that if you're not sort of teaching that, and then you're not going to get the type of person that you want to fit into your company.
So it's about putting out those expectations early on, you know, so that they kind of know how each individual company, because like you said, every company is different.
Yeah, and you know, things that you do fantastically well on your careers pages are you're very open and honest with everything. You've got links through to the company culture, what the benefits are, there's videos on there. If you've put that information out there and people are applying, they hopefully will be applying to you because they want to work for you, because they've seen the company culture, and that will have a representation of the people that are applying.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess you touched a bit about on that, how IdeaGen does that. But what would you say to companies that are wanting to attract the younger generation? Because there is a difference in how you attract someone that's, you know,
Absolutely.
45 to how you attract someone that's just left university. Their priorities are different.
Absolutely. And I think nowadays it's that company has to have that flexible culture and to trust. And I know we're seeing a lot of companies now sort of going, it's 5 days back in the office. But one thing that companies should have learned is actually 5 days in the office isn't necessarily suited to everybody. 9 till 5 necessarily isn't suited to anybody. So that agile working, if a company can adapt that, you'll see productivity of your staff improve, which will include graduates into the marketplace or students into internships. If you're giving them the flexibility but trusting them to do it, then you're going to get somebody that will flourish, rather than be dictated to, like I did when I first started work. What time, you know, okay, a lot of companies might have to have certain times that you're there, but if you have got that agile approach, then I think it's a benefit to a company, but actually a student coming in there. And I think you'll find that the more people know about it and the more flexibility, if that's what they want, then they're more likely to apply here rather than somewhere else or to another company because of the benefits that they offer. We're definitely seeing a trend in students. So when I first started at the university, it was all about salary. That's all students wanted. It was money, 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 money. And I wouldn't say that's dropped off the radar because there's the cost of living crisis and about how expensive everything is now. But I think students are more mindful about the type of companies that they want to work for, the ethos of the company, the working environment that they've got for the company. And they are, not that they can be overly choosy, because we know that there's lots of competition out there, but they're looking at company culture over salary.
I guess that is a thing. Obviously, everybody knows now how important salary is. So everybody has, you know, a lot of the big companies will have a competitive salary. So it's like, how do you then set yourself apart if you're all kind of around the same salary bracket, you know? And we were talking about this when you had your panel of students. They all look at the website. They all look to see if you've got diversity. Like, those things matter and they are being looked at. So I guess it's important from your employer brand to show that.
Absolutely. And one thing I would say to companies is students hate competitive as a salary. If you write competitive as a salary, we're finding as a career service that people are putting competitive, and when you challenge them, they're paying 24 grand. Well, 24 grand nowadays is national minimum wage. That's not competitive. Students want to know what their salary is, and they don't want to have to ask. because there is still that embarrassment behind asking about what a salary is. So for people being open and honest about them, it gives the student the opportunity to say, actually, I can live off that salary. I really would like that job. Yes, I would like to apply to them. And we do challenge it as a career service now. Anybody that puts competitive on a job advert, we will publish it, but we will go back to them and recommend that they do publish the exact, or the base range.
The range, because I know on your careers portal, when we put our jobs on there, it does it's a requirement, isn't it, to put some kind of salary in there. And I guess also they're more financially savvy, a lot of them. You know, when I left university, I didn't really again know how to ask about salary or it's important, but you know, they're much more kind of aware of that now, especially with the housing crisis. You know, everything that's going on economically.
And the one piece of advice that I would give to any employer who are thinking of taking a graduate, however scheme is, if you can in their induction offer them some sort of financial advice to go along with them, then I think it's a huge benefit. Students, they've just come out of student living where they pay one fee and they get all of their bills paid for and they just have to budget to that. But actually, when you're renting your own house, it's very different, because you've got to think of your council tax and you've got to think of your Wi-Fi and your gas and your electricity, and actually some students aren't fully aware of that. So if there is just some support within a company that can say, also as well, students' pensions, and I don't want to have to think of a pension. Actually, it is really important. You do need to think about a pension. But little pieces of advice for them, I think would go down really, really well.
I guess that leads me nicely to my next question about then retaining the talent. So we talked a little bit about attracting there, but how do you retain? And we were talking on a podcast before about a lot of young people, they do want to chop and change. It's not like they want to stay at one company for 10, 15 years. So how do you retain that talent, especially in such a competitive market?
I would say I don't fully know the full answer to that. And if anybody does know the answer to that, I would love to know. I think it's that transparency of a company and the company culture, like you say. I think you see it more in financial services companies. You see a student moving from one company to another company, and that's predominantly because of salary and the expectation. But I would just think, if you keep your employee happy, why wouldn't they leave? I've been working in the university, like I said, for 14 years, and I don't want to leave. I love my job, I love the company, I love the environment that I work in, and it makes me want to stay. But a lot of that is down to the agile work that I get. So I don't have to start work at 9 o'clock. I can start work between 8 and 10. And so for me, it's perfect because I have a son. And like I mentioned before, you might get some graduates who find it incredibly difficult to get out of bed before 8:30 in the morning. So if they can then start at 10, those little things actually are really, really beneficial to people and to a company, to help them retain people within the region. But why, if you have that gem of wisdom of how they stay. I also think it's the culture as well. If you see your peers who've gone on, everybody publishes things on social media and LinkedIn nowadays. If they're seeing their peers who've been in a job for a couple of years and then has moved to somewhere else and possibly moved to somewhere else and maybe seen a slight progression, that then would make them consider moving on elsewhere.
You touched on social media there, obviously another hot topic with the young generation. But do you think that the social media has a part to play in this kind of stereotype, I guess?
Yeah, very much, because that's where students and graduates look for now for inspiration for anything. Like, we ask them, where do you want to find the information from? And the first thing you'd hope that they would say is LinkedIn, but actually most of them say TikTok. And they see those videos in the day of the life of somebody, and not all of them are truthful. Some of them are fantastic. So a few years ago there were some graduates who went to work for some law firms, and they said it how it was. And we know it's a really tough industry to get into, and you can be working 60 hours a week if you've got particular documentations that you need to work on. And that was fantastic that we saw that. But then there is also people that perhaps over glamorize. And so when students actually, or graduates, go into a job, it's completely different to what they're expecting it to be. So our advice to them is, look on LinkedIn, research the companies yourself. Don't just use social media, like specifically TikTok or YouTube, as that grounding for research, but actually do thorough inspections themselves.
And I guess that also goes back to the attraction piece for companies that are wanting to, hire the younger generation. I know here we started our TikTok for our product, but also our people side to give an insight into, Ideagen and how our values and how the day-to-day of Ideagen run, but also, you know, we cover, you know, Instagram, and we've made reels on TikTok and LinkedIn, so it's really about covering all bases.
Absolutely. But I think as well, like, if you did something, I've walked into your offices today and they look fantastic. You've got
Very lucky with the
your
offices.
catering and stuff like that, and if someone's seeing that on social media, fantastic. But actually, if they came here or to another premises that you got and it's completely different to here, already there's that misconception, because they're expecting to walk into somewhere amazing, but actually, if you've got multiple offices and they're not all like that, and you've been interviewed in a different place, that's where things like that start to sort of come across, and it sort of has the misconception of ideas.
That's a good point, because with our grads and skills days, we do an assessment day in the office. Obviously in COVID we couldn't do that, but as soon as we could do, you know, we did, and it does give them an insight into also the team that they're going to be working with. Obviously when you do an interview, it's usually maybe like one or two, but to meet the whole team and to actually see, especially as a grad or apprentice, you don't really fully understand what the role is until you do it, you know, same with any role. So it's kind of important. Would you say it's important to have that face-to-face contact or office, you know, interaction?
More so than ever. I mean, we're seeing students say, I mean, students are terrified of video interviews. I'm terrified of video interviews. I'm sure everybody is. It's not their ideal.
You're talking to yourself in your bedroom, basically.
Absolutely, yeah, and having to watch yourself while you do that. But I think if you've got impressive offices, why not show it off and show people where they're working? And I definitely think that face-to-face is what students want more of. It also stops them from cheating.
Yes.
So obviously there is this huge rise in artificially written. And we're seeing it at the university. I'm sure you see it on application. And I think if you're going to actually get someone's genuine self, then the only way to do that is to meet them face to face.
That's a very good point, definitely. And again, that comes up a lot in the conversations that we're having, kind of AI is affecting us, but I guess in the younger generation it is the most prevalent, you know. Even at university, right, kind of when they're writing their assignments, how they apply it really affects them. But what would you say to companies that's kind of saying like, well, they did use it and they gave you a good application? Do you embrace that? Kind of, what's your view on that?
But I think that's fine. If they're using it well, then why not use it? So I use it to check, to make sure, especially if I'm posting something online, so a LinkedIn post, I use it to check my grammar, to check my punctuation. If I could use it for idea sharing, so if we're doing some thought work, sort of, can you give me some ideas of X, Y, and Z? I think that's fine if it's used in the smart way. If they're using it, which is just to copy and paste and to not be their genuine selves and to not be authentic, then that's definitely not used in the right way at all. And the problem with it is it's come on so quickly, it's trying to keep up with that. So we use things like Grammarly to put them through to check, to see how artificially things are written, but we're still very much learning as we go with this. Absolutely. I'm sure like everybody is.
Absolutely. And Ideagen, obviously we embrace Ideagen a lot, but it's about understanding when's the right time to use it and when's not. And like you said, it's something that we're all learning together. But I think it's important to embrace it. It's not going away. It'll only be more a part of our life kind of as we go on. So yeah, I think definitely have the same standpoint there. The kind of last question I wanted to ask yourself is, what do you think the younger generation can teach maybe the older generation, especially in the workforce?
How to use AI. More so than anything. I would just say, I don't really know.
So I think for us, for myself, for example, the first thing that comes up is like, I think the older generation, and this is stereotyping, I understand that, they sometimes think like, yeah, the later you stay, and if you can't leave until your boss leaves, and you know, you're always got to kind of, I guess, playing a game is very different to how your younger generation would say it. I think I disagree with that personally. Just because you're here 80 hours a week doesn't mean you're being effective. It just means you're in the office 80 hours a week. You know,
we see it as more as input will output more, rather than input. So, like you said, you could be working 80 hours a week, or you could be doing 37 hours a week, and the outputs could be exactly the same. So, yeah, I think that is also, like I've mentioned before, not that 9 to 5 culture anymore, because that is very, very different, and times have changed. And yes, kids do have to go to school the same time every day and stay the school time every day, but that's also very shorter than it is a day. But also, don't be scared to ask them their advice, to approach them, to get advice and guidance from students and graduates, because, you know, especially students at the University of Nottingham, they're very intelligent. They
definitely,
that, you know, they have grown up in sort of the culture, the COVID culture, but the way that they are now, and just to ask their advices on things. Don't be scared to do that, and don't be scared to embrace them. Just because they're young, it doesn't mean that they can't give to the company.
And I guess it's the innovation that they bring as well, and the insight. You know, they also grew up in challenging times, so I guess, you know, the resilience that they can bring to the company is only, you know, a positive thing.
Also, I know that there's so much about mental health nowadays, and I think the older generation kind of can frown upon that as well. But actually, I think, personally, I think it's fantastic. I don't think that it's not something that's come on. It's just everybody is more aware of it now, and rightly so, because everybody should be looking after themselves. But again, that shouldn't be frowned upon. If there is some form of mental health, like, work with them on it. Don't sort of push them out, because you have heard stories about this that does happen, unfortunately. But try not to let that spoil judgment, and just work with them.
That's such an important kind of point, and again, another hot topic to kind of deal with. But yeah, obviously neurodiversity is becoming such a big thing, and that, like you said, they're more aware of it. They know what to ask in the recruitment process, and it's about being adaptable, I guess. And that's what you teach the students, to ask and say, and, you know, talk to the employer in the recruitment process.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of like years and years ago, you'd see students, they wouldn't even mention the fact that they'd got neurodiversity or any form of mental health condition on an application form now, whereas we've done a whole lot of work at the university to say to people, actually, be your best self, be your true self, and you need to identify this. So my husband, for example, he's dyslexic and dyspraxic, and he would never ever tick that box on a form to say that he's got some form of neurodiverse condition, but actually it's so important that he does.
So your employer can help you be the best version.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that was a perfect point to end with yourself. Thank you so much for coming on for this episode. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It was such a great insight, and we'll jump on to kind of the next person from the university who's going to give us a little bit of facts and figures as well.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we just heard from Vicky there, which was great. Now I'm just going to let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit first about what your role at the university is.
Thanks. I'm Stuart Marriott. I'm an Associate Director within the Careers and Employability Service at the University of Nottingham. My role is to lead our commercial and operational teams. So I lead our business development function, our employee engagement function, our on-campus recruitment agency, which supports many thousands of students get work at the university, and also look after our business information and our data analytics team. So I've got my handle on the facts and figures about what our students go and do, but I've also really closely tied to our business development and all the companies that come and try and recruit University of Nottingham students, fill their internships, their placements and their graduate roles. It's a great job. I've been there at Nottingham for 9 years now. And before that I did 16 years working in similar roles at De Montfort Uni in Leicester. So I've had 25 years now working in higher education. It's been great.
Vicky was just saying that no one wants to leave the university. You must be a very good employer.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people that stay quite a while.
Yeah.
And whether that's a generational thing, that you've got people that sort of come in and see an employer for life, maybe not the same career, but the same employer for a long time. We've got a lot of people. I'm 9 years in. I still feel like I'm one of the newbies.
Yeah.
We've got some people who are way over 20, 25 years and had a great career. Because what we do in the career service is really rewarding work. You get students coming to see us that are quite ambitious about an internship, a placement, a graduate role that they want to do, and they want our help to get them over the line, to get them through that interview, through the assessment centre, and help them make the transition from studying with us to actually then being in the workplace as well, either with us or with one of the great companies that come and recruit from us. So rewarding, and a lot of people with a lot of experience and knowledge.
And you touched on facts and figures there, so I'm going to test you on your facts and figures.
Okay.
So what would you say kind of the statistics that you've seen is the biggest change kind of in the last 5 years with your students and kind of how they go into the world of work?
A lot more students interested in the technology side of a career. So students have always had this interest in digital activity, but we've definitely seen a lot more interest in tech, in use of AI, in digital marketing. So we've set something up with Nottingham Trent called the Digital Marketing Academy, which we do alongside them and a number of digital marketing organisations within Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. Loads of students have an interest in that. And that's where a lot of interest in future careers comes through. Obviously, our foundations are in the science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We were founded by the Boots family way back when, and we've still got a strong STEM culture, but actually more and more around the social sciences, around the digital arm of technology, around digital sort of software engineering stuff. That's where a lot of the interest from our students is. And when it comes to recruiting students, our computer scientists have never been in higher demand. So we probably produce between us and Nottingham Trent 1,000 computer science grads a year. There's loads of opportunities in this region and in the UK for them as well, and that's where the demand's coming through loud and clear.
And why do you think this change in kind of the different areas in the university is it because the employers, that's what we're demanding, or is it kind of a change in interest in the way that the economy is changing?
Definitely a bit of both. Advent of the internet has really speeded up the way that the world works. If you think of the Generation Z group coming through at the moment, they're digital, what we call digital natives. They've always had tech at their hands. The internet has always been a thing for them. I went to university just as people were getting email addresses, and not everyone had a website. And you think back now, how can that be? Everyone has now got email, website, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever channels to communicate. And I think with the advent of generative AI and the ease of getting tech to do stuff for you, you need to be that digitally savvy individual to get work done. I've used AI to help me write stuff. I don't mind confessing that. I've written a piece and thought, that's good. Popped it through an AI tool and it's come up with some ideas that, actually I'm missing a bit in there. I could reword that section. Really powerful way of working, but it gives clarity to a message, helps get things done so much quicker. And I think from the student side, there's an interest in there. I think a lot of our students are quite entrepreneurial. They're looking at their day job, but also maybe a side hustle as well. You hear a lot of our students come to see us about a career in, but they also want to maintain this business that they're thinking about doing. So many of our students have got an interest in app development. We regularly get asked about what's the opportunity for us to partner our app with your jobs board, because we think there's a way we could push the really great jobs on your jobs board out to students in a different way, or they can find a better, easier way for them to search. So it's really nice to hear people looking about how can we make life easier, quicker, better, more efficient in the future as well. I think that's where a lot of the demand for tech opportunities comes from. Good people who think about good solutions in an entrepreneurial way.
And we were just talking with Vicky before about kind of this stereotype that kind of the younger generation are lazy and don't want to work. Well, literally what you just said there shows that that's completely not the case.
I'm amazed just how busy our student population is. So we have something called the Nottingham Advantage Award, where students can elect to do additional modules throughout the year. So they may want to improve their presentation skills. They may want to get accreditation for the volunteering they're doing, all the part-time work. You sit and interview students during the Advantage Award processes for some of the awards that we give and some of the prizes. And they'll tell me about volunteering, society membership, the sports activities they do. And don't forget that they're trying to get their final year dissertation done. They've got their exam to prepare for. You think, how do you find the time to do all this? And that's because people's time is shifted, and the times that they get up and do things are very different to what maybe I would as someone who's a bit older. I look at the logins into our job hunting platform. It's people searching for jobs at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning.
Now
I do hope they're having a bit of sleep before they make their application. But the whole day is shifting because of tech and because of the way you can do things. And the whole mindset shift is that a lot of the younger generation, a lot of Generation Z people now do stuff when it's convenient for them. We've invested a lot of money into tech to do automated CV checking. As a career service, we're open 9 till 5 days a week. We're busy with appointments, but some of our students want help at the weekend or they want help 8 o'clock at night. So we've invested in some tech that helps students pop a CV into a CV checking platform, comes back with some suggested amendments, gives them a broad score and tells them where they can make some really quick improvements. And then they can bring that to a consultation with an advisor. But it's creating us more into a 24/7 service, which has been hugely beneficial to our student population.
And I guess there then the message is to employers in local area, but not just local area, in the UK and anywhere, that the students are really an amazing source of talent and they have a lot of value to bring to your company.
Yeah, talent, innovation, entrepreneurial spirit, but also good morals and good values as well. I've seen, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, many more students challenging us about who's coming on campus.
Because that's interesting.
We've seen protests at events. Now, protests upset us in a bit because we want all students to be comfortable with who's on campus. But we also recognise that some students may have a view about certain employers being on campus because they consider them to be part of maybe the arms manufacturing and the defence industry, and some of our students are not comfortable with that. They may have an issue with some of the banks because of stuff that has happened in the past. We're comfortable with that. We encourage students to have a voice, but we also encourage our students to respect other people's voice.
Yeah.
I think going back to that message about the students and what they bring to a company, they bring an open-mindedness, they bring some different ideas. And we've certainly challenged some of our students who said, well, I'm not comfortable with this company being on campus. Well, maybe investigate what they do. Maybe you can affect change within that business at some point. Bring your social values into that company and see how they fit and they align. I think there's often students are surprised just at some of the things that they can be able to do and influence within a business.
I'm quite shocked at that, actually. I'm quite surprised at that. But it just shows that they really do care about their employers and who they're going to work for.
What we see at a careers fair is a huge amount of preparation by our students. So we run a science, technology, engineering fair, a law fair, management fair. I'm really impressed by how many of our students come along with lists of questions for specific employers.
Oh, they do. I've been one of those employers. I'm absolutely knackered by the end of it.
They'll do the research about the schemes that you offer, the jobs that you offer. They'll look at how do I apply. They'll want to know time scale. What's the best way to get the message over? It's huge. It's really nice for us to see as a careers service and people are doing professional advice and guidance to see those students have taken that time to look at a company, to ask very specific questions, and then actually have the bravery almost to go up and ask a recruiter, can I check this with you? Can you just confirm that for me? It's really interesting. We really enjoy putting those events on.
And they're very busy as well, definitely.
Yeah. And we get good feedback from employers as well. We get good questions asked of recruiters by us as well. So a conversation with a retailer about how are we encouraging ethical use of AI by students? Because they'd picked up on some people had were using it to write their application for them. And they said, I saw 3 applications within the space of 5 that I checked. They were all the same. So how are you using AI to help, or how are you helping students use AI to better write their applications? So we've started to do some work on that. And I think maybe that's something we can do more work with recruiters on, about use of tech in an ethical way to make applications from our side. And what would you like to see us do? How can we put over for you as well?
Yeah. And that does lead me on to my next question. I know that you do a lot of work with the employers locally to talk about how to get students ready, how, and also kind of like the skills that they need, and the importance of kind of understanding the world of work and how that translates. So talk to me a little bit about the work that you do for your students on that.
Yeah, so we have something called the professional competencies. So we went through all of our degree programs and looked at what are the common things that every Nottingham student gets throughout their degree, because whilst they might be taught different subjects, there are common threads through. And one of the things was around critical reasoning and good open communication. So how do we make sure that students know how to look at a topic and then have their own view of that? How do they know how to communicate and manage relationships with others? They're really key things that we think every job in the UK needs. Every employer is looking for people who can communicate well, can have good thinking, make a reasonable argument, and put a view across in a confident and fair manner. So they're some of the key things that we do. Vicky chairs the Nottingham Early Talent Group. So a group of talent professionals, recruitment professionals that get together to talk about some of the challenges, some of the solutions, and to share some of those ideas. Having that open dialogue is really helpful for us, because it helps us provide information back to our academic department. So if we do need to change degree programs, if we're looking at changes to content, if we're looking at just the way in which we assess people, having information from the recruiters is really useful for us in helping shape what that might look like in the future.
And I guess it's about upskilling. I guess you help upskill the students, but also what we mentioned before is about continuing that upskilling even as they come into IdeaGen or wherever, you know, that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. You can go down sort of the postgrad qualification route. You can look at other professional development qualifications. We can put joint activities on. But actually, one of the easiest things we can do is give recent grads the opportunity to come back to university and talk to our students. It helps boost their confidence in terms of presentation skills, but also helps them reflect on the great things that they've done and how they're helping your business, how they're helping the next set of students come through. So whenever we get the chance to have alumni on campus, it's really helpful because they're good role models, and they give some of our students the idea that, yeah, in a couple of years, that could be me. I could be doing that sort of job in that sort of company. Yeah, really helpful for us.
And throwing a curveball question here, but just also not a lot of people, but some people are saying now that so many people go to universities, which we know, you know, is really popular. Now that degrees are going to be redundant and they don't mean as much as they used to anymore. What would you have to say about that?
I would say if you've got 40 to 50% of the UK population eventually with a higher education, HE qualification, is it not a good thing that we have one of the highest educated and the best skilled workforces in the world? Because if we have got a shifting way of working, we're shifting from being a manufacturing and sort of engineering economy to a services and IT based and digital economy, should we not have people that are so comfortable with that sort of technology and that way of working? Should we not be investing in getting people with higher qualifications to do that work? I think that's only going to be a bonus, isn't it? If we pulled back and said, actually, it's only the top 10% that can go to university, surely that's shooting ourselves in the foot when it comes to skills and knowledge and how we do things in the future.
That's a good answer.
Thank you.
But I guess also just want to touch on the point of the fact that it's about using those people that have done a degree in the right way and kind of understanding. I guess that's why it's good to have partnerships with yourself, what they've been through and what they've been upskilling and actually what they've been learning at university, and not just reading that they've done a degree and that means that they can do this, that and the other. Necessarily it doesn't.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we're fortunate in the UK that our economy is such that we're quite comfortable with a range of degrees applying for certain types of jobs. So a number of the professional services firms we work for aren't always actively just seeking accounting and finance grads. They're open to a range of qualifications because they know that students who've done in engineering, for example, have got a very good way of problem solving. They also know the student that's done English language or English literature could be a great communicator. So when it comes to things like marketing, when it comes to things like proofreading documents, to wording something, cutting down something, using the appropriate best language, that's a great candidate for that type of role. And that's the beauty of the UK HE system. You've got such a broad curriculum, you can get a really broad, knowledgeable, skills based coming into a business. And I think that's why we're so successful as a country in getting people from HE into employment.
Yeah, and again, we're the same. We just hired 5 grads, some of them from Nottingham University, but they've come. None of them have done the same degree, and none of them have done a management degree.
Right,
but it's about bringing those different backgrounds and seeing kind of where their skills can add to it. So no, I definitely agree with that statement. But kind of the final question that I wanted to leave yourself with, I guess, is for those companies, local or wherever, that are resistant to kind of hiring young talent, don't really see the point of it, they just kind of stick to the workforce that they already have. What would you kind of say to that? What advice would you give them?
Give it a go. Talk to your local universities, whether it's us, whether it's Trent, whether it's Derby, the Leicester universities. Talk to someone who's local. Most of us will have some sort of subsidised internship scheme, so you get an idea of what someone could bring to your business at a fairly low risk and a lower cost way than you might have thought it possible to do. People coming out of university have new skills, new knowledge, different ways of looking at the world. They may provide something which gives you an insight into a part of the world or part of the business environment you've not thought of before. People get older. You need to replace at some point. We talk to a lot of engineering-based companies that are struggling to replace because the number of engineers coming through is smaller than it's dropping out of the market. So do think about using universities. Placements are a good way to do this as well. Perhaps 1 year fixed-term contract, what we call a sandwich placement. Good way for someone to come in partway through their degree. You can set them projects to work on, and then who knows, if they're really good, they'll go back in their 3rd year and you may well give them the call for that graduate job too.
And if not, then you've still got value.
Yeah, and you've not really lost anything as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's such a good number of people going through with such great skills and attributes. they can make a real positive impact and a positive difference.
No, I completely agree. Like I said before, we get such an idea gen, we get such a good value, put a lot of investment in time into building all our early careers, placements, kind of apprentices and grads, and they've only kind of got such high praise and such high value in the business. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for all the work that you do with us and kind of everyone in the local area. Really appreciate it. And I recommend anybody in the local area to reach out to you or Vicky to kind of help with all the work that you do. There's loads to get involved in. So thank you.
Thank you.